Mrs. Bloom walked into the doctor's office, all bent over with a cane. The receptionist called her in. She went into the office. 15 minutes later, she came out. She was standing tall. I said to her, Mrs. Bloom, how did the doctor do that? She said, he gave me a longer cane. That's for the choir. I didn't want you to think I would use the same opening twice. Early in our worship this morning, we recited the words, Anachnu modim lach. To you we are grateful, O God. Gratitude is what I wish to express. Who would have thought that between last year and now, our world would experience such upheaval? A violent pogrom against Israel and the Jewish people, a significant rise in anti-Semitism both here and abroad, frightening rockets raining down on Israel, our own nation unsettled in ways we have not experienced in our generation, and hurricanes as well. And yet here we are, you and me, so many with family and friends, sharing together in this, our beautiful sanctuary. Gratitude is the proper expression to begin this day. Rabbi Baisley, I am grateful to you for inviting me to share thoughts with everyone this morning. Grateful to you for your leadership to our congregation, and grateful for your friendship. And I want to express my gratitude to Cantor Stanton and our beloved, amazing choir, to Rabbi Lotenberg, our Torah readers, the ushers, and the entire leadership and staff of our temple. As I begin my 7th year as Rabbi Emeritus, I'm grateful to each one of you for what you mean to me, for your kindness to Joan and me, and for your precious friendship. May we all continue to be together, especially in good health, for many years to come. These powerful Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, are designed for us individually and collectively to reflect on the meaning of our lives, the purpose of our existence, who and what we are as Jews, as people, as a community, as God's Am Segulah, a treasured possession of the divine. The biblical poet, the psalmist, has written important words for us at moments such as this. They should be familiar to all of us. Gam ki elech begates al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup is overflowing. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Those words have sustained our people from biblical times until now. From Babylonian conquest to Roman destruction and enslavement, from Crusader pogroms and Spanish Inquisition, from Holocaust to jihadist evil. In the face of death, we have survived because we believe in the goodness of life, in mercy, and we do so every day with incredible hope. On this Yom Kippur day, we are here to be reminded of who we are, the meaning of our world, and limrot hakol, despite it all, our hope in the future. Come with me now. Let's dream. In this dream, we take the train or the bus or drive our cars into New York City. We come out of the Lincoln Tunnel, turn left, then drive north until about 45th Street. Make a right turn and drive towards Broadway. Park the car and walk through the theater district. You will see marquees all up above. Each one displays the name of a drama, a musical, a comedy that can be witnessed inside. Some are familiar, long-running plays. Perhaps you've already seen one or more. You probably have your favorite of all time. You even know the music and can sing some of the songs. Some are new. You want to put them on your list. On one marquee, you see the Jewish people, the greatest story ever told. Perhaps you pause and smile, for you know that play well. Or maybe you just walk by and hardly notice. Maybe you stop and say, I got to get tickets. I got to see that. It's my story. It's our story. While standing below the marquee, you notice the many people who walk by, some quickly, not even noticing, or perhaps a slight nod and as they go their way. And since October 7, there may be some who walk by and utter curse words like F the Jews, genocide, from the river to the sea. Now, as you stand in front of the marquee, you get to decide. Do I buy a ticket and go in and sit in the audience? Do I listen to the show in Hebrew because I know the language? Or do I read the libretto? Or do I enter through the stage door and join the cast? It's your call. For me, when I was young, I decided I wanted to be an actor on that stage. You know I have encouraged you and all of your children to be actors on that stage. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but how many of you have I said you should become a rabbi or a cantor? And if not, you better be president of your synagogue and do a great job. Which door is the one through which you enter? Do you even enter at all? Now, whether you are on the stage or sitting in the audience, you'll see the set before you. It consists of two sides. One side, the Israeli side, the other side, Galut, the diaspora side. And when the curtain goes up, there will be action. Sometimes on one side or the other, often the story unfolding on both sides at the same time, and the action crossing between the two sides. And there are moments of grandeur and times of despair. There's victory and victimhood. It's all part of the play. The story is truly amazing and powerful. You will often sit on the edge of your seat, sometimes rejoicing and other times wiping the tears from your face. And the music? Well, you never heard such incredible sounds. Often in a minor key, but always flowing from the heart and even soaring heavenward. Yes, the Jewish people, the greatest story ever told. Now wake up from the dream. Rouse yourself from the sleep. It's true, you and I are the Jewish people, some by birth, some by choice, some by association. We are part of the most awesome people in the world. And we are also the most stubborn people on the face of the earth. Awesome not because of our might or superior intellect, but awesome because it is our privilege to be chosen by the divine to bring light to a world of darkness, justice in places where life is unjust, and peace where others prefer war. The rest of the world knows this. It is why for 4,000 years others have tried to emulate who we are, what we do, and how we see the world. And others still, either by jealousy or envy, want to eradicate us from the global community of humankind. Now look around. Is there any other people so small in number, so tiny in proportion to any other racial, ethnic, religious, or national group whose impact for good is so significant? Is there any wonder that the words from our most sacred texts are often found inscribed on buildings, written in literature, declared by leaders of nations, prophets in their own time? Just drive past the UN in New York City and see what is called the Isaiah Wall across the street. There inscribed are the words of our people's prophet, the prophet Isaiah, who declared, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." Yes, we are the Jewish people. Can you imagine the history of the world without our contribution? What would the story of humanity be without the Jewish people's contribution to that story? If it was all in a book and somebody cut out all the parts and references to the Jewish people, imagine what the pages would look like. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, of blessed memory, wrote these words about us. He said, "Think about the Jewish people. How probable is it that one man, Abraham, who commanded no empire and ordered no army, performed no miracle, delivered no prophecy, that he should today, without doubt, be the most influential man who ever lived, who's claimed as the spiritual ancestor by 2.4 billion Christians, 1.6 billion Muslims, and most of you sitting in this room today? How probable is it that this tiny people, the Jewish people numbering less than 1/5 of 1% of the population of the world, should have outlived the world's greatest empires? How likely is it that after 2,000 years of exile, our people should have come back to our land and there, having stood eyeball to eyeball with the angel of death in Auschwitz a mere 3 years earlier, 3 years later in 1948 said, despite the worst crime of man against man, Lo amut, echyeh, I will not die, but I will live. On this Yom Kippur, just a few days after the first yortzeit of those slaughtered by humans who went mad, who committed evil beyond our imagination, on this day of intense reflection and remembrance, I ask us all to join in contemplating who we are, who are the Jews, And what is the significance of our story, the role that we play on the stage of life? I'm looking around at this beautiful sanctuary that has been my home, my spiritual home for 50 years, and yours, this congregation's home, for almost 100. And I asked this question: what were they thinking? Those who contemplated this edifice, what were they was going through their minds nearly 100 years ago? Who were these Jews who chose to reside here in New Brunswick? What message did they wish to send to the community that welcomed them when they declared that they were Anshe Emet, people of truth? How is it that they, some 80 families, chose to build this temple with a seating capacity of 500? Did they see themselves as survivors of Europe's bloody history of pogroms against Jews? As descendants of those who fled the Inquisition rather than abandon their faith? Or were they dreamers, players on the stage of the Jewish people, the greatest story ever told? Now, on this Yom Kippur morning, my thoughts turn not just to you and me, not only to our past, but also to future generations. We already know that they will inherit a world different from the one that you and I have lived and loved. Our lives have been blessed by a golden age of Jewish living. For most of us, anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, has been nothing more than an annoyance. The generations that came before us broke through the barriers to Jews that at earlier times had kept them from living in certain communities. At one time, Jews were not welcome in Highland Park. They were excluded from the finest colleges and universities in our country. And that prevented them from entering proud professions. Do you know there was a time when Jewish doctors could not practice medicine at both of our local hospitals? Only St. Peter's Hospital welcomed Jewish doctors. It took courage and persistence for some Jewish physicians to break through the barriers at what was then called Middlesex General. Now look up at the stained glass over here, center top. You see the name Norman Reitman? How he loved this congregation. This was the very place where downstairs he met his beloved Cyril, also inscribed there, when he was a student at Rutgers. Norman, who lived to 105, once told me of how he and two other Jewish physicians broke the barrier that kept them out of the hospital. And later he went on to become chief of the medical staff and chairman of the board of his beloved Rutgers University. He also told me that before he became chairman of the board, he was sitting at a board meeting one day, and the subject of a Hillel on the Rutgers campus came up. And a few of the board members expressed their concern about having a Jewish presence on the campus. Now, I don't remember who was the president at the time, but Norman told me that that president of Rutgers banged his fist on the table and said there will be a Jewish presence on our Rutgers campus. And so finally they built the Hillel building at the furthest end of the campus on the Douglas campus. Only later, in our time, did it move to College Avenue, along with Chabad. On this Yom Kippur morning, I'm thinking about the generation of my grandchildren, your grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. What will they say about us and our generation? Will they say that we squandered the inheritance of our golden age in America, the legacy we received from the generations that preceded us, that the great synagogues and communities that we built, like Anshe Emeth, are now receding vessels of the past? Will they say, as author Joshua Leifer recently wrote, mainline Judaism has sunken into indifference, satisfied with its shallowness and unaware of its own religious ignorance? I ask you, will our grandchildren drive down Livingston Avenue and say, that was once a synagogue? Or will they declare this? In our parents' and grandparents' time, that was the most dynamic and important institution in our community. And it still is. We are so proud to be part of it because this congregation shapes the meaning and purpose of our life and the life of our children and all who are touched by its powerful and sacred presence. Now, my children and my grandchildren have a saying, which is that all roads go through Anshe Emeth. They truly believe it wherever they go, whoever they encounter. There's an Anshe Emeth connection. And I think they are right. It's not because of who we are, but because of what we are taught here. What we learned here about living in community, what we celebrated and continue to celebrate as proud Jews declaring to the world not what was, but what will be. When I drive by the temple and see the people in line waiting for diapers, we're the second largest distributor of diapers in the state of New Jersey. Tell that to everybody with incredible pride. I told that to Rabbi Rick Jacobs a few months ago, and all he did was say to me, "Are you telling me the truth?" Really? Yeah, they line up around the building. The undocumented, the poor, the needy, the ones who can't afford diapers for their children. And we give them out and give them life and meaning. I believe that our task is not how do we become more like America, but how do we make America more like us? I hope that our friends and neighbors will say of us that Anshe Emeth is a congregation of Ohavei Tzion, of lovers of Zion. Now let me borrow from Ronald Reagan, the younger Ronald Reagan, the atheist. I'm a proud and unabashed Zionist, and I will be all my life. And I hope you say the same thing. We love Zion so much that we will do everything we can to support our people in Israel, to work with our friends who also seek change in Israel's democracy. And we will vote when we have the chance, come next spring in the World Zionist Congress elections, the place where we make an impact on the state of Israel and on the Jewish people worldwide. I hope our friends and neighbors will say, we have never met a people like the Jews. Their generosity flows from the depths of their faith, from their commitment to justice for all, and for their belief in a world of kindness and peace. They are the most stubborn people on the face of the earth, and we thank them for being so. This last spring, I participated in a conference called Recharging Reform Judaism. It was the second such conference. Rabbi Baisley and I attended the first, and in fact, we were involved in the planning of the first one, and I in the second one. One of the speakers was my colleague, Rabbi David Wolpe. Wolpe served Temple Sinai in Los Angeles until his retirement, and then was a fellow at Harvard Divinity School, and now is on the staff of the Anti-Defamation League. And during his talk, he told us that from time to time, he has a conversation with his great-grandfather. Any of you here have such conversations with those who came before you? In August, I took my 11-year-old grandson. We flew up to Rochester, and I introduced him to all the members of the family in the cemetery. He saw his namesake. He saw his great-great-grandfather's grave and his grandfather's grave. And then, of course, we got in the car and did as I always did after being at that cemetery. We went onto the beach and we had ice cream. At Abbott's. Where else? Now, during his talk, Wolpe spoke about the dream he had with his great-grandfather. He said to his great-grandfather, "There's anti-Semitism at Harvard." And his great-grandfather responded, "There are Jews at Harvard?" And then he replied, "Yes, and they hate Israel." And his great-grandfather responded, "There's an Israel?" Wolpe gazed into the audience and declared, "Our ancestors would dream of having the problems that we have." Now let's return to the drama on the stage. On the diaspora side, we are witnessing an ugly anti-Semitism. You all know that. It's frightening. Some of us have even removed the mezuzahs from the doorposts of our homes. Others have removed their Jewish stars that they usually wear around the neck. Many college students are uncomfortable and even fearful of who lives down the hall in their dormitory. Imagine somebody having a card or a piece of paper slipped under the door of your room that says, "From the river to the sea, death to Jews." Thank goodness elected officials and law enforcement personnel here in America have stood strongly side by side with all of us, but that's not the case in every land. This is a time for us to be ever more vigilant in calling out anti-Semitism and Jew hatred whenever and wherever we meet it. And it is time for us to learn to teach our children to declare openly and publicly how to respond with, "We are the Jewish people. We're not going to take this hatred from anyone. We will not respond in kind, but rather continue to be who we are, a people of generosity, of justice, of compassion, and of peace." Now, when I think of Israel's birth, now 76 years young, here's the vocabulary for what I see: miracle, rebirth, renewal, kibbutz, bringing home the refugees of Europe and North Africa, creating a modern and thriving democracy, renewal of a creative Jewish life, welcoming Soviet Jews, Ethiopian Jews, safety, security, peace with some of our neighbors, startup nation, drip irrigation, WhatsApp, Waze, medical discoveries, spiritual wonder, and so much more. Each word describes a feeling of wonder and pride that we all share in the true miracle of our people's rebirth in our ancient land. And yet, when we consider our beloved Israel, this past year has given us a new vocabulary list: trauma, fear, displacement of thousands, hostages, desecration of towns and villages and kibbutzim, thousands of rockets from far and near, tourism from without and within, messianism that is dangerous and evil from Muslims and Jews, and also resilience. Brothers and sisters in arms to act when the government fails to do so. Have you ever experienced such high drama, such emotional stamina, and at the same time spiritual exhaustion? I wish it were only theater performance on a stage, but it is not. It is the reality of Jews living in the world. Our security is an illusion, both in Israel and everywhere we choose to live. Now, we could, if we choose, we could enter into a period of despair, of cynicism, retreating from the world as we know it, but our faith and tradition forbid us to do so. Gam ki elech gegetzal mavet lo ira ki ata imadi. The Lord is my shepherd, my cup overflows. Goodness and mercy shall follow me wherever I go. Maybe that is why our people's anthem is called Hatikva, the hope in a better tomorrow, a better world, a better future for those who come after us. In a few hours, our prayers will turn to those who perished for the sacredness of life. Our people, people of goodwill, we call them martyrs. We will honor their memory and their sacrifice. And we will also recall our own loved ones, parents and grandparents, and children too, whose lives we recall with blessing. And this year, I pray that we will add the names of the fallen on October 7, the brave men and women, our sons and daughters and cousins and friends who lived for freedom and who defended against terror, and even the innocent too. I wish there would be enough time in the day to be able to recite the names of all 1,200, each one individually, who perished on October 7. I wish we could recite the names of every one of the 101 hostages who still remain in captivity. I would like to recall one name, a name until now you probably didn't know. His name is Yossi Hershkovitz. Put it in your memory, and when you go home, Google it. Yossi Hershkovitz, YouTube. If you forget, send me a note, I'll forward the name. Yossi Hershkovitz was a teacher and then principal of a school in Jerusalem, father of 4, loved music, and he was called to serve in Gaza on October the 8th. He joined his army unit, and from Gaza, he recorded a video for his students. You can watch the video, by the way. In it, he said, "I was raised to give without receiving, not just out of habit. And thank God I am privileged to be part of an awesome nation of incredible people, the Jewish people, who give with all of their soul to the nation. We are all here fighting shoulder to shoulder as one people with one heart, and we pray that we will defeat evil and bring good once again to the world. A few days later, in a quiet moment, his commanding officer heard Yossi begin to sing a song. It went like this. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Even when I walk in the valley of shadows, I shall not fear. It was a haunting and powerful melody. His captain asked him, Yossi, who wrote that melody? And Yossi said, I did. He sang it again so that his captain could learn it. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo ira ra ki ata imadi. A day later, Yossi Herskovitz was killed by a booby trap in a tunnel. At the funeral, his captain sang and played the same melody and sang the same words, ending with, Ach tov yirdufeni ki kol yamei chayai, v'shivti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. May his memory be for blessing, and may goodness and mercy follow us all of the days of our lives. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Now, I shared the story of Yossi Herskovitz with the Lunch and Learn group about a month ago. And Dana Stein was so moved by it that she immediately called Dave Schlossberg and asked him to compose an oral arrangement, a choral arrangement, for our choir. And she dedicated it to Ricky Stein's memory, who loved the choir, loved Israel, and oh, how he loved this congregation. Listen to it now.
Hashem.